Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali on TV1.
And a very good evening to you and a warm welcome to Newsline Live. Now then, environmental challenges, all at sea. Let's find out, shall we? We have the former chairman of the National Ocean Affairs Committee, Chris Dharmakeerthi. Very good evening to you, Chris, and welcome to the program.
Good evening, Faraz.
How true is this? Is our maritime affairs, is it causing a lot of concern? Do we need to move things? What do we need to do?
Well, I believe Sri Lanka is both blessed as well as cursed because of the oceans. And we all know what's going on with respect to the global tussle for controlling the Indian Ocean. And with Sri Lanka being in the middle of it, in the northern part where it's a choke point, potentially with the sea lanes going very close to our shores. China, USA, India have a watching brief on what goes on politically in this country as much as where our alignments are. So in that context, we have a problem to deal with.
How can Sri Lanka be firm and not, or how can they handle this choke point situation that they find themselves in?
Well, I think Mrs. Bandaranaike, in her term, in the 70s, talked about Indian Ocean a zone of peace and a nuclear disarmament zone. I mean, Mr. Dhanapala died recently, Jayantha Dhanapala, and he was part of the disarmament movement of the world. And he himself was one of the proponents of creating a Indian Ocean as a nuclear-free zone. But, I mean, we have gone beyond that point now. India is a nuclear state. Pakistan is a nuclear state. So that horse is bolted. So now we have to deal with what's coming in the future, which is the pivot to the Pacific, from the Pacific to the Indian Ocean by U.S. And clearly the competition between China and the United States of America is heating up, as you probably know, reading the international news. And so Sri Lanka has to take the non-aligned position, but it also must recognize that it's a neighbor of India. And we can see what's happening in Ukraine and with Russia, in a small state that might threaten a bigger state. You saw that happening in the 1960s with Cuba and the United States. So in all of these equations where you are a neighbor, where you're a small fry against a large neighbor, you need to understand their security concerns as much as yours and play the role in a passive and equitable way without unnecessarily ruffling anybody's feathers.
But is Sri Lanka making maximum use of our resources, of the resources available on the seabed?
Well, I mean, as you know, Faraz, in 2009, I was responsible for submitting Sri Lanka's claim to the UN to extend the continental shelf beyond 200 nautical miles up to 800 nautical miles in the south beyond the equator.
Yeah.
And further north to in the Bay of Bengal, all the way up to the Bangladesh and the Myanmar EZ, as well as the Indian EZ, both with the Andamans and the Indian East Coast.
Right.
Now, that's a substantial asset that Sri Lanka potentially has. Of course, it has to share it with India, Myanmar, and Bangladesh in the northern part of the Bay of Bengal, and the southern part is theirs for us to take.
Right.
And of course, on the western side, there are bits that will overlap with the Maldive Islands. Now,
but we'll have a fair chunk to ourselves.
Yes, but even if we don't have a fair chunk to ourselves, because India has the right to claim using the Statement of Understanding provisions under the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, which they can piggyback behind Sri Lanka's claim as the first state in the southern part of the Bay of Bengal. So even if we have to share it, there's a substantial resources in the Bay of Bengal, be it mineral sands, be it the natural gas that is lying there, and the petroleum resources, plus some of the other rare earths and some of the nodules that are sitting in seamounts like the Affinity Mount Sea Nickerton that is sitting south of Sri Lanka.
But Chris, what you're talking as if this has not been achieved. So what's going on? What's the hold-up?
Well, When we claimed, we were 43rd in the queue. And as the 43rd in the queue of a long list of countries that were trying to claim their extended continental shelf, the UN as a body can only evaluate a limited number of submissions at a time because it's a very, very rigorous scientific interrogatory process that the UN employs. And so it took us, actually initially we were scheduled for 2028. I managed to get a 120-1 resolution passed in the UN in 2009, and we managed to expedite our claim for 2017. And over the last 5 years, we have had extensive consultations with the UN scientific body called the CLCS. And we came to a finality of them accepting our submission, accepting the outer edge of our claim. But unfortunately, in November of last year, just at the tail end of Sri Lanka's claim being finalized, the government of India objected. So there is now an objection that has been filed by the government of India against Sri Lanka's claim, which leads the UN, whenever there is a neighboring country dispute with respect to any claim, they put a hold. Right now, that's not a negative as such. It could be a positive, because that gives us time to pause and rethink as to how we want to proceed further ahead with our claim. Now, India is stuck on their western coast with Pakistan putting objection. So India can't actually go ahead with its seabed claim in the western coast. They have a problem on the eastern coast because Bangladesh has put an objection. And we never had any of those issues. We managed to navigate this quite diplomatically all along. But until November of last year, when India suddenly out of the blue submitted an objection.
So it seems that really we need to work soon, quickly, and get our act together.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Sri Lanka's ocean resources, I mean, we have the Ministry of Fisheries that is just focused on the living resources. Right. We don't, then we have the mineral resources in terms of the oil and gas that is being managed from a regulatory perspective, from a separate body that is not answerable to any ocean affairs ministry. We need a Ministry of Ocean Affairs in this country that can bring together both the living resources and the non-living resources of the country, and the ports, because we have substantial overseas assets that are now sitting on our coast in terms of harbor management and so forth. So all of this requires a much bigger perspective than a fisheries minister, per se.
But how focused have successive governments been on this need to really focus on a far bigger picture than this?
Well, I must say the current president has been the first person to really push for the Blue Economy Initiative, where there was a think tank that was also set up recently to focus on. And your own channel has been talking about the Sea of Ceylon. And clearly there's a greater interest. But the interest alone does not help us as a country to focus on the requirements. We don't have a oceanography institute as such. I mean, we have NARA, but NARA is more focused on living resources like fisheries, but we are not focused on the...
So why don't we have an...
well, these are things. So the Geological Survey Mines Bureau, GSMB, which is the body that is empowered to look at the mineral resources and the hard resources below ground, are quite ambiguous. There's ambiguity as to where they have the mandate to go into the ocean, right? So clearly we need a presidential task force to look into all of the anomalies, look at the gaps, and have a concerted budget allocation to establish these institutions. Right?
We have a president who's known for being quick off the mark to appoint committees and so on in his entire political life. It's almost a hallmark of our president. So why is this being delayed?
Well, I think he might be considering, because especially with the Express Pearl issue that has been now, I think, causing a lot of grief within the Attorney General's Department itself as to what went on. And before the Express Pearl, there was also the oil spill incident that happened in 2021. And in both these cases, Sri Lanka kind of bungled the way in which it went about getting those claims for Sri Lanka ruled in our favor. And so I think it calls for a presidential inquiry as to how all of those issues were mishandled. And I'm sure the president, being a lawyer himself, might consider establishing some sort of presidential commission to look into this.
Are you concerned that time is going by?
With respect to what?
In respect to us sorting out our application, if you like, in terms of the extended continental shelf and these greater matters.
Yeah. I think
Especially I'm asking the question because, as you know, and as we all know, Sri Lanka is having a huge problem, a huge crisis in terms of dollars.
Yes, I think we
no
missed
money,
the
no
bus,
money.
or we missed the boat, if you
Right.
like, missed the ferry.
Okay.
Right. With respect to the Express Pearl claim and the previous one, the oil spill claim.
Captain Haddock would say blue blistering barnacles. What on earth's going on?
Absolutely, we're going to call Tintin here.
Yeah.
It's Snowy to help out.
Yeah.
But the point here is, right, I think the marine, when it comes to marine affairs, I don't think we have a competent set of lawyers because it's a very substantive and a very wide field. And when it comes to compensation and claims relating to insurance companies, that in itself is a speciality. And I think what happened was, with respect to both these incidents, Sri Lanka should have first established its writ by saying that it's going to be determined as per the laws of Sri Lanka, and there has to be a determination that Sri Lanka has to announce with respect to the incident. Then you need the authorized regulatory body, which is MIPA, the marine body, who has to basically take charge of any vessel that is in distress in Sri Lanka. I think there's a misunderstanding on the part of perhaps the Navy and maybe even the Attorney General's Department. They thought it was the Director General of Merchant Shipping who should direct affairs, but it's not them, because when it comes to pollution matters relating to oil spills or chemical spills or plastic in the case of Express Pearl along with the chemicals, it is MIPA that has to drive it. Using provisions of the Act, I think provision 24, clause 24 of the Act, and under those provisions they should have acted. And they should have then appointed the Sri Lankan Navy to help save the ship, and they should have also instructed the ship owner to save the ship itself and also to save the country from pollution from whatever goods or they're carrying in the ship from spilling over. So I don't think any of that happened as such.
Right.
And then it is MIPA then that has to also file the compensation requirements for Sri Lanka. Of course, the Attorney General can do that. The Secretary of the Treasury could do that. But there is confusion, I believe, as to who should be in charge. So that's something that has to be clarified. Yes.
Is it, people have been talking about, it's been reported in the press and so on. The value of the claim is 6.4 billion. There's been a lot of interest in the value, clearly because of our empty coffers in terms of foreign exchange reserves. Is it really too far-fetched, or do you think that's like about the right figure?
Well, let me put it this way. The way we should have gone about was we should have first asked the P&O Club, which is it's like a mutual insurance fund for ship owners. Sri Lanka should have written to the ship owner and the ship owner's mutual fund, which is the P&O Club Insurance, and told them to make an indemnity or make a provision that they will lodge with the Sri Lankan bank or with the government. They make us a provisional payment. Not that we draw any of that money out. It's money that is in the bank. It's an indemnity. It's like a bond, like a performance bond. Once that money, and that could be $1 billion, it could be $2 billion. I believe for the Express Pearl, we could have got up to about $3 billion as a provisional payment ahead of any arbitration or court proceedings that Sri Lanka has to then file subsequently, using Sri Lanka as the jurisdiction. Right?
So they'd file the case here in Sri Lanka.
You got to file the case here, and you got to first get that indemnity, the money, into the bank first, right? Because once you get that money, and generally most of the reinsurances, even for P&O, from my understanding, even with Express Pearl, they were prepared to set an allocation out because that's normal practice. And in the case of the previous case with the oil spill that happened, when there was a vessel that was listing off Trincomalee, same thing. There was a different provision for oil claims, and up to 6 years you have the right to claim things. And again, there is a provision that you can get, I believe, on the tonnage of the cargo that's carried, up to about $129 million we could have got as an indemnity upfront.
Right.
Not that we can draw on it, but it'll be in this country's balance sheet initially, in terms of a bank or whoever. And then we had to file the claims by looking at the permanent damage that is caused to our coastline, or the impermanent damage. And if it's impermanent damage, whether it's an oil spill or pollution, then that we can prove in our courts and we can claim more than the indemnified amount. But if it is a permanent damage, then we have to claim only within the amount that they have agreed for the indemnified amount. So in that case, it would have been $129 million. Right? But again, you have to subsequently file these, and it's a negotiation that you have with both the insurance companies and the ship owners. But generally, most ship owning companies are shell companies, and shell companies don't have many things in their assets except for the vessel in itself.
Yes.
So if the vessel has sunk to the bottom of the ocean, that shell company has nothing really beyond a sunken asset.
So how do you work around that?
So you go to the insurance company,
Right.
because it's the insurance company that has to pay.
Right.
So that's what we haven't really done.
Okay, on that note, let's go for a quick break and take a peek at this evening's headline news. And we'll be back after that with Chris Dharmakeerthi, former chairman of the NOAC, NAC. See you on the other side of the break, shall we?
News First, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali on TV1.
Sri Lanka's latest effort to revoke licenses, imprison journalists and impose fines. Multiple factions strongly oppose government attempts to take control of the media.
මූලික අයිතිවාසිකම් කිහිපයක් කඩ කරන බව තමයි අපිට බැලු බැලීමට පෙන්නේ.
මේ හදලා තියෙන්නේ මේ ආණ්ඩුක්‍රම ව්‍යවස්ථාවේ 14 වෙනි වගන්තිය සම්පූර්ණ උල්ලංඝනය වෙන මේ නිකම් විකාරයක්.
මේක ත්‍රස්ත විරෝධී පනතෙන් කරගන්න උත්සාහ කළ බැරි වෙච්ච නිසා මේ වැඩේ මේක හරහා ගේන්න යන බවක් තමයි පේන්නේ.
Social media activist Bruno Divakara arrested. Iran resumes execution of anti-government protesters after 4-month pause. Media Secretary Anusha Palpita tells COPA that Sri Lanka's channel ratings is a facade.
ඇත්ත කතාව අපේ ප්‍රධාන මාධ්‍ය ආයතන තුනක් ඕකෙන් 300ක් විතර සල්ලි දීලා අරන් තියෙන්නේ. ඒ ගෙදරට සල්ලි ගෙවලා බඩු මල දීලා රුපියල් 30000ක් විතර දුන්නාන් පස්සේ ඒක තමයි රේටින් එක. ඉතින් ඒක එතනින් එහා පැත්තට යන්නේ නැහැ.
Sri Lanka's inflation slows again in May. Rupee appreciates further.
When a heart attack strikes, every minute makes the difference between life and death. With the right care and treatment at the hand of the most skilled surgeons and medical professionals. With the perfect environment for recovery. Darden's Heart Centre, dedicated to you.
News First, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali on TV1.
And welcome back to Newsline Live. I'm in conversation with Chris Dharmakeerthi, and it's all matters to do with the ocean and environmental and so on. Chris, tell us, what on earth, why is there an almost constant battle between Sri Lanka and Indian fishermen? Illegal fishing, apparently.
Well,
Why can't the Indians monitor them? They've got far more resources than us. Can't they do their little bit
not
for their
quite,
tiny neighbour?
not quite. Prabhakaran
Or him?
did everybody a big favor
Really?
with the Sri Lankan Navy prohibiting any sort of naval or maritime activity in the northern in the Pork Straits and in the Mannar Basin. It became a sanctuary. It became a sanctuary as a spawning ground. For 30 years, there was no fishing. So it became the best possible spawning ground for all kinds of fish to breed and crustaceans. So once the war was over, and from a no-go zone, it became open seas for any of the fishermen to go fish. There were no fishing boats that were there with the northern fishermen because most of the confiscated or blown up because the LTT sea tigers were using it. So consequently, the Indian fishermen from Rameswaram and other parts just kind of came across and they found a bounty. Because just imagine, it was
years and years of inactivity.
And if you take the number of business groups that are operating in Chennai and along the coast that export fish, not only to EU and the Maldives, but also internally within India, this was the best thing that could happen to any of them. So there's a lot of politically motivated interest who are influential in Delhi as well, who have been pushing for a leniency as far as the Sri Lankan authorities are concerned. And they've been always pleading, please be lenient. These are poor fishermen. Let them have a go at this fish. So that's how it started. And there was a bit of leniency that Sri Lanka extended to them as part of a political handshake to go easy with India. But of course, then that became a problem.
But, Chris, how's the best way for Sri Lanka to handle this?
John, an out-of-the-box solution?
Yes, an out-of-the-box. It's always the best. Out-of-the-box. Nothing quite like out-of-the-box.
Well, as you know, there's potentially 50,000 megawatts of wind power that USAID report has identified from Putlam all the way to Jaffna, both inshore and offshore. So if you look at the offshore wind power potential, it's not about giving it to the Adnanis, but it's about finding Sri Lankan entrepreneurs and others who could be all given opportunities to create, or maybe even invite Adani himself, to invest into offshore wind power plants. And you can pretty much create a zigzag zone of wind power plants that are strategically placed. It's almost a veritable sea fence. But what it'll do, it'll slow down these massive fleets of fishing boats from intruding into the Sri Lankan waters. I mean, they'll still do that, but then they can't get out as fast if you strategically place the wind power plants.
Right.
So that's, it's one of those out-of-the-box solutions that Sri Lanka can easily consider doing.
Have you shared this information with anyone?
Well, one in jest have talked about it, right? But we haven't really, people, that's a good idea. But where's the money? I mean, the money is there. Put a submarine cable, sell the power to India. So what we're doing wrong with our ocean economy, Faraz, is we have free energy with wind, which we can sell to the Indians, to the Indian subcontinent, because they import about 92% of their energy needs globally from whether they import coal or whether they import their nuclear fuels or what have you. So India's economy is growing, and their middle class is growing, so consequently their demand for power is growing. So Sri Lanka is sitting on ocean energy that it can generate itself and sell to India. But what we are now doing is we are selling the right to generate the energy to Indian companies who are then pocketing the entire profits from that energy that should be rightfully banked on a Sri Lankan balance sheet, which we are not doing. Right? So we should do that. And if we do that, then we overcome our problem with the fisheries, which is the living resources, with a non-living resource of wind. So that we could do. But we haven't done that.
No.
Right? We have OTEC, Ocean Thermal Energy, in Trincomalee, in Boondel. We have about 6 points to do ocean energy.
Yeah.
We haven't done the OTEC power.
Yeah.
We also have wave energy, which we haven't done in terms of harnessing, right? So there's substantial energy resources that the oceans around Sri Lanka provides, which we haven't really had a concerted effort to do, which is why it goes back to my previous point. We need an ocean affairs ministry that start looking at the regulatory framework to bring about these opportunities for the benefit of Sri Lanka's balance sheet and not just sell it off to foreign investors who basically bring the capital to put in the infrastructure, but then they are harnessing the free energy without paying for it. Because there is no royalty payment that's coming for the free energy. And then they're taking that energy and reselling that energy back into the countries that, of course, now they're selling that energy to the Sri Lankan Electricity Board.
Yeah.
So we are buying that energy, right?
Whereas we could be selling.
We could be selling.
But, I mean, these sound wonderful sort of tools, if you like, to help the governor of the central bank in his quest to get more reserves in. But why is there, what's holding us back? Is it a lack of knowledge? Is it a lack of commitment? Or is somebody saying, how much is it in it for me before I can do this?
Oh, well, I think with respect to the oceans, if you take our tertiary education institutions, there's very little, even though we have an ocean affairs in, university and we have the Southern University in Ruhuna that is looking at a few of the living resources issues. We really don't have a concerted effort to train our youngsters who are going into the university system to start studying ocean affairs and oceanography, mineral resources, material sciences. None of that. I mean, if you take the mineral resources that we're taking out of Pulmude, for example, I mean, that's mineral sands that we are just separating on rutile, zircon, and just a few elements and selling it for a pittance. The equivalent industrial value, if we invest about $200 million to produce titanium dioxide for the paint industry or as titanium as metal, is $16,000 US per ton. But what we're getting now is about $60 a ton.
But it sounds so marvelous, and you know, Sri Lanka will truly be, as Mahinda Rajapaksa promised the people of Tangol, that he would turn Tangol into a Singapore. Well, I went to Tangol yesterday, and I don't think I saw anything like Tangol there. But nice ideas. Why on earth can't we? I'm sure we have the talent and so on. But honestly, will we have overseas companies wanting to invest in such high tech with great investments in this country when our policies are not stable, the political climate is anything but stable? Are these all contributory factors?
Well, I think you're right. For us, when investors, I was a venture capital fund manager previously working with Intel and managed a $6.5 billion fund and brought in a lot of money to India, believe it or not, in the 90s and in the early 2000 period. And that's because there was a clear opportunity space with the legal provisions and the regulatory framework in place to bring the money in. And although there is corruption in many of these countries that we have invested in the region, Sri Lanka, in a peculiar way, the problem is you can't get things done because there are too many blocks. You know, we think we play rugby in this country, right?
Yeah.
Now, you're a rugby player. In rugby, you've got to have the ball to be tackled.
Yeah.
But in American rules football, you don't need the ball to be tackled. If you're the receiver and you're just jousting to receive the ball, even before the ball receives you, somebody can tackle you. So our bureaucracy, the officials who have to give approvals for projects, they play American rules football. They know how to block, right? So therefore, any investor who comes here, even if you get the political patronage, even if you get the green light from BOI, even if you shake hands with the minister, there are about 16 other parties who are out to block you. So that's the problem for most investors to come to Sri Lanka. So the political leadership in this country must recognize that that's where the problem is, as much as they are a problem themselves in asking for certain goodies for themselves. But it's clearly the bureaucracy that really blocks lots of these things.
And to think that Margaret Thatcher tore away most of the red tape and bureaucracy in Britain and made doing business in Britain far, far easier into the success it is today. And that Sri Lanka is still stuck with all this red tape.
Yeah.
Would you put the red tape in the nearest dustbin? It's not here today. I can't see the dustbin. But, you know, I would chuck it all in the dustbin. Would you?
Yeah, I would just burn it.
Burn it.
Right. I'll burn it.
Thank you very much, Chris Dharmakeerthi. It's been wonderful talking to you. It's now time for that other wonderful program, the Primetime News. Take care. Have a great evening as much as you can. and God bless you all. Thank you.